Hello, my name is Monisha Chirayo. I'm from the Public Justice Center, and I'm here with Melissa Rock from Advocates for Children and Youth, and we're glad to be presenting to you today on strategies to support unaccompanied homeless youth and foster youth pursuing higher education. As participants in the Maryland College Application Campaign, many of you are working to make college a possibility for students who are least likely to apply. And the two populations we're going to discuss today are very much within that category. We'll start with some background on who are unaccompanied homeless youth and foster youth and the challenges they face. Then we'll talk about unique considerations that these youth will take into account in selecting and applying for college. Third, we'll review the financial aid options targeted towards these two populations. And finally, we'll share 3 examples of how Maryland colleges are seeking to support unaccompanied homeless youth and foster youth.
Hello. So first, let's talk about unaccompanied homeless youth. When we talk about these young people, we're referencing the McKinney-Vento definition of this population. These are youth and young adults who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence and are not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. Although some of these young people might be staying in a shelter, like you traditionally picture homeless individuals, a lot of these young people will be doubled up. It could be with a friend, but they're not on the lease, so that situation could end at any minute, or they could be with a relative, but again, a relative who doesn't have legal custody, and so at any moment might put them out of being able to live there. It's hard to count these young people because they often aren't staying in homeless shelter. But the national estimate is that there are between 1.6 and 1.7 million youth who are between the ages of 13 and 21 that have experienced homelessness each year. Of that population, in the 2012-2013 school year, only around 28,000 of these unaccompanied homeless youth actually applied to college across the country. In Maryland, there was a count of unaccompanied homeless youth in 2015. It only occurred in the counties listed here, and that counted 834 unaccompanied homeless youth. For the number of foster youth, right now in 2016, there were 1,093 foster youth 18 to 21. In Maryland, you can stay in foster care until you're 21. You don't have to leave foster care when you turn 18. This map shows where these young people's court cases are. There are the greatest number of foster youth in Baltimore City, followed by Baltimore County and Montgomery and Prince George's County. And then you see the breakdown from there. In the 2014-2015 school year, there were only around 217 foster youth that were actually attending college. The year prior to that, there were only 106. So clearly there are huge gaps in getting foster youth and unaccompanied homeless youth into college, which is why we're thrilled that you all can help increase those numbers. So let's talk a bit about the barriers to higher education for this population. First, when they have to fill out the FAFSA forms, these young people often will not have access to their parents' financial information. They also don't have financial support from their parents. These young people probably don't have the financial means to live independently, or if they're living on their own, it might not be a safe situation. Once they're enrolled in college, they're still going to struggle with being financially self-sufficient. There might be limited housing options for these young people, especially affordable housing. These are young people who have to struggle adjusting to being in college and the intensity and rigor of the college academics, with ensuring they have a safe place to live, they have enough money for food, and all their other responsibilities, and are often lacking adult guidance and support. And finally, even if there are support services available, they might not know about those support services and might have trouble navigating the system. Now we're going to talk about the process of applying to college for these young people and selecting which college is best for them. So to ensure that the Maryland College Application Campaign really does outreach for unaccompanied homeless youth and foster youth, it would be great to include the county's homeless education liaison and at the Department of Social Services where you are, the education point of contact in your planning team. It's also important to encourage young people who are experiencing homelessness or are foster youth to involve adults that they trust in the process. They might not have parents engaged, but perhaps they have a close relationship with a teacher or a coach or a friend's parents who could help them walk through it. When you're doing outreach, if you can target the local Department of Social Services or homeless youth drop-in centers or mentoring programs, that could be really great and a good way to reach this hard-to-locate population. And we have CASAs there. CASAs are court-appointed special advocates. CASA is an organization that works with foster youth, and each CASA usually just works with one single foster youth, and they have a lot more time than that young person's caseworker might have to help walk through the process of applying to college. Finally, providing unaccompanied homeless youth and foster youth with examples of other youth who were experiencing homelessness or in foster care but had success in college is a really great way to show these young people that they too can be successful in college. When we're talking about what schools are right for these young people, we want to make sure we don't set these young people up for failure. Getting them in the door is a great first step, but it is only the first step. So first we have to think about housing options. If they're living on campus, where are these young people going to live during breaks? Even if they're not living on campus, what kind of affordable housing options are nearby the school? For foster youth, although they might still have a great relationship with their foster parents, if their foster parent doesn't have room in their house and certainly isn't getting funding to care for them anymore, that likely isn't an option for that foster youth to stay. As we discussed, these young people are going to need to be working during school. And while there might be jobs on campus, those jobs might not pay as much as they need to make to be able to be self-sufficient. So what kind of jobs off campus are available for them near the schools where they're applying? And then transportation comes into play to that as well. What kind of tutoring would be available for them on campus where they don't have to pay for the tutoring? And what supportive services are available for them? And how easy will it be for them to access those supportive services? And finally, if they are young people who have children of their own, there needs to be child care available for them, or they won't be able to be successful in school. As you well know, applying to college is an expensive process. So we want to speak briefly about some of the fee waivers that are available for unaccompanied homeless youth and foster youth. These are youth who are eligible for free and reduced price meals, and so are also eligible to have the fees associated with SATs and the ACT waived. They're also eligible for the application fees to be waived. The waivers are accessible through College Board. That uses the same criteria as for the SAT. And finally, although there are also fees associated with advanced placement exams, outreach should be done to the advanced placement coordinators to see what kind of arrangements can be made to waive those fees for unaccompanied homeless youth and foster youth as well. Now Monisha is going to speak about financing college.
So one of the biggest barriers confronting unaccompanied homeless youth and foster youth with respect to the higher education is the cost of tuition, the cost of room and board while attending school. It's a significant enough barrier that many young people within these populations don't think college is financially realistic. But the good news is that there are a few mechanisms and a few sources of financial aid specifically targeted towards this population. The first that you all should know about is the College Cost Reduction and Access Act. This is a federal law, so it protects unaccompanied homeless youth and foster youth around the country seeking to apply for federal financial aid. And just to back up for a moment, these two populations of youth are almost by definition without a parent or a legal guardian, right? You heard that unaccompanied homeless youth lack stable housing and also are on their own without a parent or legal guardian in their lives. Maybe they've been kicked out, maybe there's been a breakdown in their family situation and they've had to leave and support themselves on their own. And same goes for youth in the foster care system. Because they are without a parent or legal guardian, one initial barrier to even applying for financial aid can be the standard requirements around obtaining financial information from a parent, information about income, assets, or getting signatures from a parent. What the CCRA does is it establishes that if you are unaccompanied and homeless, or if you are a foster youth, you need not report your parent's financial information or get a signature in order to be able to seek federal financial aid through the FAFSA. In other words, you can complete the application without involving a parent at all, and your aid package will be developed on the basis of your own financial situation as a young person without accounting for whatever money your guardian or parent might have available but really isn't making available to you. Now, with respect to unaccompanied homeless youth, there is a process for establishing your eligibility, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But again, the CCRA is a mechanism by which unaccompanied homeless youth, foster care youth can access federal financial aid for any accredited college in the country. Now in Maryland, we have some additional very generous benefits available to unaccompanied homeless youth and foster youth. The first is the tuition waiver, and we have a version of this for each population. What the tuition waiver does is it allows unaccompanied homeless youth and foster youth to go to Maryland's public colleges completely tuition-free and use any additional aid they get through the Pell Grant or other federal, state, or private scholarships towards their living expenses. Essentially, if you qualify for the tuition waiver, then tuition must be waived at the get-go, and you can apply for additional money to cover the rest of your expenses. You get up to 5 years to use that waiver until you earn your degree, and that degree could be a bachelor's, associate's degree, or a vocational certificate. But again, it has to be at a public institution, so community college or statewide public institution here in Maryland. It cannot be used for private universities or out-of-state institutions. Now, to qualify as an unaccompanied homeless youth, you have to meet a number of eligibility criteria. First, you have to be unaccompanied in that you're not living with a parent or a legal guardian, and you have to be homeless in that you lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. You might be couch surfing, you might be staying in a youth shelter, you might be living out of your car, a number of the situations we described earlier. And you have to have this status verified. There's a few different ways in which a young person could do this. One, if they are a senior in high school, and their school system has identified them as unaccompanied and homeless, they can have their McKinney-Vento liaison for the school system verify that status. Every single school system in Maryland has what's called a McKinney-Vento liaison or a homeless education liaison who is responsible for identifying and supporting homeless students throughout the school system. And this person is in a position to simply write a letter saying that this young person is unaccompanied and homeless and therefore should qualify for the tuition waiver, or likewise to be treated as an independent student under the CCRA. It's the same verification process. And a letter from McKinney-Vento liaison is sufficient to establish status. If a young person is, say, a sophomore, no longer in high school, then they could verify their status by getting a similar letter from a shelter where they're staying. So if they're getting services or staying at a shelter that's funded through HUD or the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act, a letter confirming their status from the shelter is sufficient. And then finally, if they are not able to get either a letter, a McKinney-Vento letter or a letter from a shelter director, which is going to be true for most youth because most are not staying in shelter, and after their first year, most are not connected with their high school, they can get have a determination made of their status through their college financial aid office. The financial aid office has an obligation to sit down, do an interview with the student, ask about their living situation, try to understand, why they're not connected with family, and through that process can verify their status. Again, if you have a letter from a shelter or from a school system determining your status, you do not need to have a further interview with the financial aid office. The financial aid office has to just take that letter as truth. But if you do not have a letter, then the financial aid office has an obligation to do a documented interview. Young people do not need to present documentation to prove that they're homeless. By definition, they don't have leases. They often don't have documentation that proves their status. But this conversation with the financial aid office will aid in the process. And there's a whole lot out there providing guidance to financial aid officers on the appropriate way to gather the relevant information. Foster youth are eligible for the same tuition waiver that covers Maryland public colleges and universities. Now, not all youth who have spent any amount of time in the foster care system are eligible. This is a program targeted primarily at those youth who spend time in care at an older age. So to qualify for the tuition waiver, you have to have a qualifying foster care status, which includes those listed here. Either you were in foster care when you got your high school diploma or GED, or you were in foster care when you turned 13, and then at some point after that adopted or placed into guardianship, or you are the younger sibling of a person meeting that previous criteria, and you've been adopted or placed into guardianship with your older sibling after that older sibling turned 13, or you were in care for at least a year at age 13 or older before reunifying with a parent. So essentially, those youth who spend some time in care, and it's got to be care within Maryland, as a teenager, may qualify for this tuition waiver. Foster youth can also qualify for some additional funds through the Education Training Voucher. Now, this is a federal program, and youth all over the country can access it and can use it to attend public or private accredited universities in any state. It provides a capped amount of funding, up to $5,000 a year for full-time students or $2,500 a year for part-time students, and it's not guaranteed. It's distributed on a first-come, first-served basis. So youth are well served to try to apply as soon as they know that they will be going to college or that they will be applying to college. Now, to be eligible for the Education Training Voucher, youth have to, again, have a qualifying foster care status, and a lot of the sort of covered individuals are those same individuals that would qualify for the foster youth tuition waiver. It includes those who are currently in care when they're seeking to access the funds. They were in care on their 18th birthday, even if they no longer are, or they were in foster care on their 16th birthday and then adopted or placed into guardianship. There are also a couple of criteria around age. You've got to be 18 to 20 for first-time applicants or under 23 for renewal, and you do need to maintain academic progress. Now, we've talked through various considerations to take into account with respect to unaccompanied homeless youth and foster youth who are trying to get into college. Once they're there, they'll need additional support as well. As we discussed, young people may be juggling employment and child care responsibilities on top of education. They may struggle to access transportation, and face a number of other challenges because they don't have an adult consistently in their life to support them. Schools that have really succeeded in supporting unaccompanied homeless youth and foster youth not only get into college, but get through college are those that offer a number of supports on campus. And we'll take a look at 3 examples here in Maryland. First, the Community College of Baltimore County, CCBC, has a unique program which is called Student Navigators. Student navigators are responsible for supporting a large population of students who may confront different types of challenges that make getting through college a little bit more difficult than for the rest. And with respect to, within the student populations they target are unaccompanied homeless youth and foster youth. CCBC receives a list of youth who are receiving the tuition waiver, whether they're unaccompanied and homeless or in foster care, each year, and they affirmatively reach out to these youth to provide them with support. The types of supports they provide run the gamut from clinical counseling to legal assistance to emergency funds to cover rent or other living expenses, to bus tokens and other transportation support. The navigators meet with students on an individual basis to check in with folks and see how they're doing and what they need. And a particularly unique aspect of the program is that there's a partnership with the Department of Social Services to provide access on campus to public benefits. There are CCBC partners with 2 earned benefits specialists from the local DSS office who visit campus on a regular basis to help students apply for cash assistance, food stamps or SNAP, child care vouchers, and so on. So this is a mechanism by which this particular campus has been able to provide those wraparound supports so that young people experiencing homelessness or coming out of the foster care system can focus on their education. Prince George's Community College also has a model particularly targeted at supporting foster youth. Their coordinator of recruitment includes foster care youth as a special population included within her caseload. And she partners with the local Department of Social Services in Prince George's County to provide support for this population. So that can include support with accessing public benefits. It can include support with getting referrals to outside services. And again, that recruitment coordinator serves as a point of contact on the campus that foster youth can rely on consistently to check in and to turn to when they're facing struggles sort of outside of the traditional academic struggles that may be impeding their progress. Finally, University of Maryland College Park is in the process of developing a system to create single points of contact for foster youth and unaccompanied homeless youth. Now, this is very much a work in progress, but the goal is to identify someone, the director of the Office of Parent and Family Affairs, to serve as a single point of contact for these youth populations. The responsibilities of that single point of contact will be to assist young people apply for financial aid, including completion of the FAFSA even without parental support, and applications for tuition waivers. The SPOC also is available to check in with students and to identify any outside needs or social service needs they need and develop strategies for meeting those needs. So this is a model that has been used across the country, the single point of contact. And one long-term goal for Maryland is to have single points of contact at all of our campuses so that unaccompanied homeless youth, foster youth, and other similar student populations have a consistent source of support to help them get through college once they're there. We'll close out with some resources that we encourage you to rely on. The NACCE College Toolkit is very helpful as a tool for guidance counselors and others within schools to use with homeless students and students in foster care. It provides information on supports that are available to these populations and sort of considerations to think through. The Public Justice Center and ACY are resources for you all as well at the local level. Thank you very much. We appreciate your engagement and your support for unaccompanied homeless youth and foster youth, and we welcome you to contact us if you have further questions or would like additional information on how you can support these student populations.